If you've struggled with what you consider to be an insatiable appetite for food, you know what I'm talking about. You go on a diet and maybe things go well for a couple of days or a couple of weeks, but somehow you end up where you started, or even worse, you gain the weight back with a vengeance. I know how frustrating that can be. At this point, you probably feel trapped and you think this is simply the cards that I was dealt with in life. I would say otherwise. If you give me a couple of minutes here, I'll explain what I believe to be the cause of all the issues when it comes to food. People like Dr. Gabor Mate have tried to explain this problem to an extent. Watch this clip.
If you come to me as an addict and you say, I got such and such, and I ask you, what does it do for you? And you say it numbs the pain, then my question is, where did you develop the pain? What happened? And then we have an inquiry. Physicians don't understand this. They keep dealing with the effects, which is the addiction, and the behaviors, which are the effects of the addiction, but not the cause, which is the childhood distress.
Okay, I agree up to a certain point with Dr. Gabor Mate. I believe that yes, trauma and addiction are connected, but then the question is, where does the trauma start? And you may say, well, in childhood, but why? And here's what I believe to be true. And I believe that the true genesis of the problem is this. We have to go back into the Garden of Adam and Eve and the forbidden fruit, right? What an analogy for what we're speaking about here. And whether you think that this analogy or story or whatever you want to call it, or an allegoric story is true or not, I believe that our current situation, the trauma and the addiction rates in humans proves that this account is pretty accurate. You already know that humans, we're constantly seeking a dopamine hit, right? Whether it's alcohol, cigarettes, or maybe that innocent drug called food. We're constantly looking for a state change, right? We're constantly looking for that high that's gonna give us that momentary state change. The question is why? Why aren't we at peace? Why aren't we content and fulfilled? Here's what cognitive scientists say about this particular problem. We are born with a God-shaped hole in our heads, and as a result, when children encounter religious claims, they instinctively find the plausible and attractive hole that is rapidly filled by details of their religious culture or wherever they happen to be born into, right? These things that their parents tell them. But I think Blaise Pascal has a better explanation of this. He says the problem, he says, is this. He says, what else does this craving and this helplessness proclaim? But that there was once in man a true happiness, of which all that now remains is an empty print and trace. This he tries in vain to fill with everything around him, seeking in things that are not there, the help he cannot find. Those that are, though none, can help, since the infinite abyss can be only filled with an infinite and immutable object. In other words, by God himself. I want you to take a look at this tattoo that I have here, okay? Because I myself need to be reminded of this truth. In this circle you see here that says God's story is Genesis chapter 3, and this speaks about the fall of man. Adam and Eve were in the garden, they had everything they could ever want or need, but then the serpent comes along and deceives Eve, right, and tells her that her eyes will be open and that she will know good from bad. And this is where man's craving begins, right? Men are now craving everything. And so, because they were rebellious against what God had told them, they fall into sin. And when they disalign, they disconnect from God, they actually now have this hole and they need to basically find it in other things that the world has to offer. So let's call that alcohol, drugs, pornography, and why not food, which it fits what we're speaking about here, right? And it is a big, big challenge. It is an addiction, it is a crutch. And so what man realizes as they're going after every one of these idols is that the more they partake in these idols, the emptier they feel. Right? And this is something that is well documented inside of addiction. Your thing that caused so much high and made you feel super good, the more you do it, the less it satisfies you. And this is true for money. This is true for all the things that the world has to offer and what we often replace God with. That was my particular case with my substance abuse issues and all the other issues and dependencies that I had until someone shared the gospel with me. In the beginning, I was very reluctant. I was very resistant to that idea, but I finally put my hands up in the air and surrendered, and things started to happen in my life. I started to grow in my knowing and my knowledge of God. I started to see not just with these eyes, but with the eyes of my heart. And I realigned with God what happened here in the garden in the beginning of times. And as I aligned there, my life started to really work. And oftentimes a lot of the things that I heard in the church and that I heard from some of my pastors were very hard to believe. But because there were so many fruits in my life and because my life was so different, I couldn't argue with that. And so I had realigned with God. And now once you realign, you have the ability to come back into this circle here and basically now talk to people like I'm talking to you over this camera about these idols and these things that I couldn't see before that I thought were so normal and they were just part of life, but they were breaking me and taking me to an early grave. And so in this video, I'm probably speaking to three types of people. There's the person that believes, right? There's the person that knows something is up there, but they have no idea what that thing is. Or I speak to the people that just don't believe, period, which I just believe is rebellion in people's heart, because we all see the sun rise, we all see the sun fall, we all realize that there's something there, that this world is too perfect, and that Big Bang or this whole chaos could never bring the kind of complexity and systems that this life of ours has, right? And so when I speak to these three people, you have these people that are ready to make some changes and say, okay, I realize there's some crutches in this particular case. Maybe it's food, maybe you've struggled, maybe you've white knuckled your way trying to discipline yourself. You've been on diets, you've been on a bunch of different things and nothing has really worked and you're frustrated. And if you're a person that believes, then you say, okay, yeah, I agree with everything you said about your tattoo, JT, but how does this have to do anything with my food addiction or the challenges I have with food? And I'm here to say that if this alignment really brings fulfillment, peace that surpasses all understanding, and that if we believe that Christ came to bring life and life abundantly, then wouldn't you consider a self-controlled life in all areas an abundant life? If you're a believer, and particularly a Christian, and you believe that the Spirit of God dwells in you, then wouldn't it be plausible to say that everything inside of this realm can be controlled, at least to an extent? I'm not talking about perfection, but I am saying that there is a peace, that there is a self-control, that there is joy, that there is fulfillment. And so maybe what's happened is that you haven't connected these heart convictions with the actual things that are happening, because oftentimes believers, we have a hard time with practical theology. In other words, it makes sense in here, but when it comes to the practice, it's very, very difficult. And so maybe for you, it's about just connecting those heart convictions with these practical things. And for the non-believer, maybe the prayer for you is, hey, if that guy on YouTube was right about what he was saying about God, if that's true, reveal that to me. And I believe that if you say that with a genuine heart, he will do that for you. And you will be able to overcome a lot of these issues and a lot of these challenges. So I just want to reiterate some of the things that were said here, because I think the sequence is important. I believe that we are fallen human beings. We're born that way, right? This is our genes from Adam and Eve. This is basically our inheritance. And until we reconnect and realign to God, that self-control, that peace that surpasses all understanding is literally impossible. And it's something that we can't manufacture ourselves through discipline and self-control, or white knuckling our way, or that kind of stoic self-control. This is for the believer, the non-believer, and the person that is not sure what's going on there. And I believe that these tools can be very useful for you. And I want to give you 7 tangible and practical things that you can do right away to get these things in order. Number 1 is the idea that I mentioned earlier, aligning with God so that He can fill you with His fruits, and you can have that love, that understanding, the patience, and lastly, inside of the fruits of the Spirit there in Galatians chapter 5 is self-control, which really is the essence. Love and self-control are the thing that are going to take you into this abundant life. Number 2 is to change your environment. When I had my dependencies and my issues, I had to remove myself from certain environments because they were triggering and tempting, and had I stayed in those environments, I would never been able to overcome my dependencies. And so if you're in environments that are triggering and tempting towards food or the thing that you're struggling with, you need to remove yourself from those environments. It will not happen for you if you continue to stay there. Number 3, you need to upgrade your circle of influence, the people you hang out with. Maybe these are family members or friends, and you love these people and you're like, what do you mean disconnect? How do I do that? That's probably one of the toughest things in the process of healing and recovery, is to remove yourself from these circles. But until you do that, you will not grow. You will not overcome these dependencies. I say sometimes that, sounds a bit harsh, but that you can't soar like an eagle if you're hanging out with scavengers, right? And so it requires that you upgrade your circle and you hang around people that actually inspire you, uplift you, and are bringing positive things into this new lifestyle. And until you do that, it's going to be very, very hard. Number 4, we need to create systems in our life. James Clear says that we don't rise to the level of our goals, we fall to the level of our systems. And so until we have systematic approach to habits the things that we wake up everything and we do systematically with alarms, with visual cues, with things that remind us of what we're doing, it's gonna be very hard, right? So we need systems in our lives so that we can execute on those habits on a daily basis. Number 5, we need to create life guidelines. Our lives are guided by the stories that we tell ourselves, right? And so every single thing that happens, good or bad, is guided by an internal story that is conscious or subconscious. So maybe these are things that are in your awareness. You know that you tell yourself a certain story, and based on that, you have certain actions. Or maybe subconsciously, some negative things are happening in your life and you've never considered those stories. In that case, you need to take inventory and you need to reframe those stories so that you can create some powerful narratives in your life that will allow you to take better, more positive actions. So creating these guidelines is super, super important. Number 6 is consistency, right? I think we all suffer from instant gratification. We want things to happen right away, and if they don't happen, we get super disappointed. But it's like working out. If you go one day to the gym, you won't see any results. 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, 5 days, maybe a year, you won't see results. But it's that compounding effect and that consistency that actually leads you to success and brings your goals to fruition. So we need to be consistent. We need to rinse and repeat. Last but not least is number 7, which is accountability. Nothing happens with a third unbiased accountability partner. You need someone to keep you accountable. More importantly, someone that you have paid, because I believe that when you pay attention. So having someone in your life that can really, really remind you of your commitments, especially when it's a tough day, you have adversity, there's stress, and that accountability partner is there to keep you accountable to your commitments. That's super important, and this is the person that allows you to continue to move forward. So if you're ready and you're listening to this and you're like, man, this sounds amazing, I need that accountability, and you want a systematic approach to this, then the Empty Your Bucket Nutrition Plan is a great solution for that. We don't count macros, calories, or points. We make things super easy. We help you lose 25, 30 pounds in a matter of 90 days without being hungry. But more importantly, there is that interdisciplinary approach that is required to truly come to a sustainable lifestyle. And so that talks about the cognitive processes of nutrition, thinking of things in practical terms and having the strategies, the systems in place, but then also thinking of this from a spiritual standpoint, which most nutrition programs don't speak about, but I believe is super important. And that's the basis of this video, which I hope you've understood. And if you haven't, please watch it again. I hope you've enjoyed this video. As I always say at the end of my videos, I hope you put this into action. These are the things I enjoy speaking about, things that edify the mind, the body, and the spirit. If we're not family yet and you haven't subscribed to this channel, please do so we can stay connected. My name is JT Tapias with the Empty Your Bucket Nutrition Plan. I hope you enjoyed this video. Talk to you soon. Ciao, ciao.